My enemy's enemy is my friend. You must have heard this idiom, but it is playing out in geopolitics today. The only difference is that the United States is inadvertently uniting all of its foes: China, Russia, and Iran. The U.S. Secretary of State has hinted that Beijing might be thinking of sending material support to Moscow. This means arms and ammunition. At this point, Beijing has not confirmed any of this. But if it is proven true, Washington has vowed serious consequences. In the coming days, the White House will reveal some intel on the matter. While Beijing might pump arms into the war, on the other hand, the country is drafting a peace plan. China is part of a small pool of countries that Russia will listen to. So Xi Jinping is working on a peace initiative. It will be revealed around the one-year anniversary of the war. Whether this will impact the course of the conflict, that remains to be seen. China is playing very clever with its ally strategy. It is approaching every door that the United States has slammed shut. And when it comes to Russia-Ukraine, it is trying to have it both ways. Beijing is calling for peace and stability, but at the same time showing full support to Russia in the war. The West believes that a Russian victory would color China's actions towards Taiwan. However, for China, cozying up with Russia is beyond the issue over Taiwan. It intends to start a new world order where the United States is not at the center of it. From a pro-Russian stance on the war, demanding sanctions to be lifted against Iran, to not apologizing for the spy balloon fiasco, China is not backing down, and it is surely not shying away from building its alliance. Now, for more on this, we are being joined by Greg Swenson, who is a China analyst and international affairs expert. Thank you for being with us. Now, how do you look at the ties between the U.S. and China? They were already frosty, but the balloon controversy seems to have deflated the diplomatic ties.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice of words, but it's surely a speed bump, Allison. The relations were already frosty, as you said. Surely the balloon incident did not help things, or does not help things. So, look, I think that, it's better to just be a little bit diplomatic here and be calm about it. I think Biden tried to do that. Of course, there's suspicions that President Biden is compromised in dealing with China because of his family's business interests there. But I think that, I think that the U.S. understands that trade with China is necessary. We're currently at $2 billion a day. And I don't think that, trade, obviously U.S.-China trade is not going to disappear overnight. And I could say the same for Western Europe. So it's important to maintain some sense of diplomacy here. But on the other hand, there's for good reason that the prior administration called out the Chinese for IP theft and mercantilist trade behaviors, treatment of the Uyghurs, the disaster in Hong Kong, as well as more recently the Chinese have basically pulled the plug on the WHO in terms of their investigation on the origins of COVID. So, these are difficult diplomatic matters. I don't think trade's going to disappear overnight, as I said, but I think that countries would be wise to consider the trade-offs between cheap labor and the conveniences and economic benefits of cheap labor versus the risks of dependency and IP theft especially. So, look, there's a lot to work out here, but I think I'm optimistic that the countries can work it out.
All right. And Greg, how do you look at Antony Blinken's statement that China may be on the brink of supplying arms to Russia?
Well, I mean, I guess it's up to him to call them out on that, but I don't know where he got that information. That he was a little vague in his statement. He wasn't clear, as to why he suspects that. Of course, it's always something that's been considered. The U.S. and the U.K. especially are supplying Ukraine with a considerable amount of arms. The Russians are quite capable of supplying their own, but of course could benefit from any inputs from China. They're also considering, or at least talking with Iran. So there seems to be a bit of a consolidation of those countries, notably China and Iran, who are supporting Russia versus the West that outwardly supporting Ukraine. But then, of course, we can't ignore the global South, which really hasn't piled on to either side in this campaign.
Right. And Greg, is China becoming a counter bloc that should worry the West?
Yes, I believe they are, but it's not new. I think that was the suspicion from the beginning. The West was hoping that China would actually not necessarily support Ukraine, but at least be a bloc or a voice of wisdom with the Russians, with Putin. They haven't done that, and nor did I expect that they would. But there is talk of the Chinese, and you're seeing it at the security conference in Munich. There is talk of the Chinese trying to broker some sort of truce here, and they've been discussing that with the French, the Italians, and the Germans. So perhaps they could be involved in this conflict, in this proxy war, the same way the West is supporting Ukraine. They could be supporting Russia, but on the other hand, they might actually be able to broker some sort of a deal.
Right, Greg, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for your valued insights
Alison.
and analysis. WION, now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.